Got it. Okay. So we're live now, and then we'll just let people in. There's a 10 to 15 second delay for YouTube. Okay, good. So okay, so we're just starting to let people in. And it takes Zoom, I think, you know, it takes Zoom a few minutes to kind of let people in. So I'm going to wait a minute or two before we actually, so welcoming the people who are joining now. And I do this, so actually, you know, last time we did this, I asked people to put in the chat where they were viewing from. And it turned out that the chat was disabled for some reason, and I didn't do it. So if you're just joining us, somebody try to put in where you're calling from, where you're joining us from, just to see if you can. Because I actually looked at all of the settings for the, you know, for the meeting, and there was nowhere that said the chat was disabled. So I'm hoping that people can write in the chat. Anyway, so we're just welcoming people in, maybe 30 seconds before we start. And if you're on YouTube and you would like to ask a question, go ahead and type it in the comments, and we have somebody monitoring YouTube, and they will ask me, they'll text me the questions. So just make sure my phone's on. Okay. Your chat says disabled. The chat is disabled. That is crazy. Okay. I'll probably have to call Zoom and ask them why that's happening, because I didn't change anything. So if you have a question, or if you want to make a comment, use the Q&A. There's a Q&A button down there. So use that for the chat instead of the chat. And we will, yeah, I can't change it from here. All right. So we will go ahead and get started, and I will just say good evening and welcome to this evening's presentation. Thank you for joining us. My name is Judy Kitt. I'm the president of the Foundation for Mind Being Research. And if you're new, if you've never joined us before, I want to let you know that the Foundation for Mind Being Research, or FMBR, is a nonprofit, all volunteer run organization based in the San Francisco Bay Area. We've been around for almost 43 years now. We were founded by scientists and healers who were really interested in the nature of human consciousness. And so since 1980, we've been a forum for scientists and healers and artists and shamans and researchers who are really trying to understand the nature of reality, and working to expand the context within which we see ourselves and the world. And so we're excited that you're joining us tonight. And we are, I want to let you know our website is fmbr.org. And our YouTube channel is FMBR TV. So we are honored to have my friend and mentor, Linda Fitch, with us this evening. Linda is a practicing shaman who has studied with the Inca of Peru for over 25 years. She's trained hundreds of students in shamanic healing techniques and maintains an active healing practice. She's in high demand at venues and conferences around the world. She just got back from back east. She does business consulting and is specialized in teaching how to teach. She has more than 30 years experience working with businesses, groups, language patterns, and modeling from the field of neuro-linguistics programming and shamanism. She's taught around the world, and she also leads spiritual expeditions to Peru. I actually just got back from Peru with Linda, and we had a fantastic time. So Linda, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And to talk about this ancestral healing, I'm so excited that you're here now, because this time of year, you know, as we approach the Day of the Dead, and what's called, All Saints Day. In the Celtic tradition, the veils between the worlds are very thin, and it seems like the perfect time to be talking about our ancestors and healing those lineages. So welcome.
Thank you, Judy. And thanks to everyone from the FMBR. I'm really, really honored to be here. And I'm glad you had shamans in your whole list of people that were okay. So tonight's topic is all about, I've called it blood and bones. It's healing the grief and the trauma in our family lineages. And I actually have notes. So if I look down, I just want to let everybody know that's what I'm doing. So just want to make sure we stay on time with it. Should I just go for it?
Sure, just go for it.
All right. So tonight's going to be about really, really simple tools is what I want to do. And this started from a personal journey. So again, as Judy was saying, I have had been practicing shaman for over 25 years. So my practices and my tools that I've learned from like many, many different paths in shamanism. And what I found is that my mom was, right as the pandemic started, about 90 years old. Well, she was 92, actually, to be specific, and ended up into some care with my sister. And I was just having this overwhelming sense of guilt, which was coming up for me, just because I couldn't be there and didn't want to be there, actually, as part of what was happening with it. And then there was some trauma that came up within my family that was old family patterns. And I went, gosh, I have to learn new skills. So what I did is I did a deep search into finding new tools. It's all about finding new tools that work. So I applied them to my life, things shifted, and then I went, oh, this is amazing. Then I started to share with all my clients, absolutely every one of my clients. And then I started getting all the comments from them, Linda, this is shifting my life. This is what's shifting the needle for me. Actually, had some of my clients were saying, or my coaching clients, they were saying, Linda, actually, in all the work I've done with you for years, this is the one that's shifting things. So then it was really where I was motivated to say, oh my gosh, this works. This works. These tools work. So tonight is about tools, and really in the spiritual realm, how do those tools work? And so that you can take them home so that you can apply them right away with it. Part of it, so we're going to start clear back with epigenetics with it and start with that place of your parents are important. Whether they were good parents or not, this is not the discussion. This is not the discussion where they were good or what they did or what they didn't do. They're important with it. And here, I love it. Many of you know this, but it is when your grandmother, so you think about your grandmother, when she was 5 months pregnant with your mom. So your mom's just in utero, so little tiny, teeny tiny. So your mom's inside your grandma, you're present. The precursor egg of who you're going to be is inside your mom, who's inside your grandma. Now we know our generation, our grandmas were going through a lot of stuff then. We had a depression happening. We had lots of survival things happening, depending on where your grandparents were in the globe. Like there was a lot of things happening in the world right then. Then if you think about it, then your grandma, when she was that egg, she was that precursor egg, what was happening to your great-great-grandparents? So, and then it's the same thing with the sperm with it. The precursor sperm you developed was present in your father when he was a fetus in his mother's womb. So when we look at it from this way, the epigenetics, it just gets passed down. Like we talk about it. I look at it. So the imprints, these imprints that are passed down, it's not whether they're affecting you, it is they are affecting you right now. And whether we talk about with the time of the Day of the Dead with the veils, or I'm actually going to say with all of the astrological shifting, talk about the shifting in there, and the shifting with the planets as we step to the Aquarian age. This stuff is up for healing. There are patterns that are here to be shifted with it. Epigenetics, I just want to mention a few of the studies with it. I asked Judy, I said, do I need to go through a bunch of studies for this group? And she goes, no, you can just do, that was the way in for science. And my background is science too. I go way, way back to science. And then I shifted to neurolinguistics programming, Silva, and then from there into the shamanic work and modeling how people heal. So in the studies, variety studies with epigenetics. So epigenetics is not that it changes your genes, but it changes the chemicals around your genes. So as Bruce Lipton would say, like what we turn on and what we turn off. So in our energetic field, you can have imprints that are never going to show up this lifetime. So you can have coding in your field that you will never bring into fruition this lifetime. That's what we turn on and we turn off. And of course, it's affected by our environment too. So some of the epigenetic studies, and you guys probably know a lot of these Native American youths, Holocaust survivors. I do want to show you one. I was showing Judy while we were doing our little warm up, just incredible. Ethnic groups that have had ethnic cleansing, American slaves who crossed the Atlantic. There's actually something called the Middle Passage Syndrome that has to do with deep fear of water with it. Racial memory from descendants of the American Civil War. Judy, should I show that one on the university?
Sure, go ahead. I was also thinking of the Irish famine, the like famines and things that caused people to move.
Okay, so this is actually a study that is this is descendants of the Holocaust survivors, but I wanted to show you this image. And it's fascinating. So you can see what the cursor is, where it just talks about from the paternal grandfather. If there was a severely underfed before puberty, this is your paternal grandfather, the grandchild was less likely to develop diabetes. But I want you to jump down here to this bottom right one, where it says the paternal grandfather overfed as a boy, more likely to die at a younger age. And we're going to jump up here, maternal grandmother. If your maternal grandmother was severely underfed before puberty, then the grandchild's more likely to develop diabetes. And then if we jump down here, the maternal grandmother smoked while pregnant, the grandson has a higher risk of being overweight. I'm going to jump up to the father. If father was severely underfed before puberty, the child was protected from heart disease. Can you see a pattern between the male and the female? Absolutely different. If the mother was severely underfed before puberty, the child was more likely to develop heart disease. Is that fascinating or what? So it's not, so the coding of how those epigenetics show up, it's not the same. It's not the same from the male, from your mom's line to your dad's line. And it's not the same, even if we're looking at one generation back, it's not the same between the mom and the dad or the grandma and the grandpa. It's different of what they experienced is going to show up in the studies. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, I'm going to stop my share. So there is lots of studies. I'm just going to mention a few of them, not just on the epigenetics, but about DNA. And the intention I'm bringing these up is to recognize how important the DNA. So we could look at it from the epigenetic studies. That's one way to look at it. Absolutely fascinating. But then we also talk about the DNA phantom effect. And many of you I know are scientists, and you could talk about this a little clearer than I'm going to talk about. And it was done by Russian scientists. And what they did is they had a tube. They actually vacuumed out the air, and they only left the photons in it. Then what they noticed when they did that, the photons were all moving randomly. Then what they did very carefully, they put a human sample of DNA in the tube. And then the photons, that light organized around, and it was actually shifted and changed, influenced by the DNA. Now, here's what's cool. They take the DNA out. You would think those photons, the DNA's gone. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone. You would think those photons would go back to the random movement, the random order. They don't. Those photons stay in the same order that they came up with, that was arranged around the DNA. When we talk about our light body, it's not just the genetics. It's like, this is held within our field. This is held within the field. There's studies done on the water memory with it. And there's a beautiful little YouTube that goes through that. And from the Nobel Prize laureate, Luc Montagnier, Montagenier, is French. You might be able to pronounce it better than I do. But how that we carry that DNA is that electromagnetic field is also held within water. And actually what they did is they took water that had DNA, and then they percussed it down till it was just straight energy, just straight energetics, just like homeopathy, just straight energetics. And then they ran sound through that. So now it is sound. And then over in Italy, or it was France and Italy, between the two countries, they actually had a sample of water. They sent the sound to a different country. This is just music. They projected it through the water, and it created the DNA. And actually the study's fabulous because there's no way in heck that was possible. And they talk about it's not possible to do that. How can sound was created from the DNA was actually went in the water? And of course, I love this because we are mostly water, depending if you're male or female. You're more higher percentage of water or less higher percentage of water. They have another study that the Army did, and then I'll finish with the studies. So the whole thing is just to recognize how important the DNA was. So the Army did this, and I think in 1993, where they took volunteers and they took cheek swabs with it. And then they took the DNA cheek swab and they took it to another place in the building. And then everybody that was the volunteer, what they did is they showed them emotional pictures. And these were from the Army. So it was like people getting killed, it was like some very emotionally strong images. What they found, that at the exact same time that these were being viewed, there was an effect over here with the DNA that was from a distance. It was actually measured over there with it. The astonishing find was that the DNA in the chamber exhibited the identical responses of the subject at exactly the same time. So the Army did some of those all within the building, and then then they stopped the study. Then the scientist actually then went through and took it 350 miles away, did the same experience, same experiment, and they found it didn't matter how far away it was. When this person, the sample person, the volunteer experienced the emotion, it showed up over in the DNA. And so if you think about that, how that rolls down to our kids with it. So it's the power of your DNA that we want to talk about. That's why it's called blood and bones with it. And the trauma that happens, these imprints, these events that happen way back, they are influencing us. And there's a core event, if we look about it from the spiritual shamanic connection way, you know what one of the core traumatic events is? It's where we got separated from the earth. That's the core trauma. And that's what we're trying to reestablish, is this connection back to spirit, this connection back to source. Now,
and it's in our mythology, right? I'm sorry, I want to go back to the Garden of Eden, right? It's being expelled from the Garden of Eden.
Expelled from the Garden of Eden, expelled from the earth itself, our connection to it. Now, part of it is actually logistically what's happened in the Roman Empire, as the Roman Empire was crumbling down, no longer safe, people went out to the villages. And then, of course, then what they did is they went back to the herbal practices. They went back to these things for the healing. They collected plants and herbs. The Roman Empire, and this is happening in waves because there's no internet. It's all happening in waves. So the Roman Empire tries to rise again. And what it did is it used Christianity as a way to do that, as a way to tap back into that power. So then what they did is they outlawed any practices that were earth practices, where not only were you persecuted, you were put to death. Anything that had to do with those earth practices, we were cut off. We were cut out, thrown out of the Garden of Eden, cut off. So from the place of earth practices, spiritual practices, This is the core trauma. This is the core trauma. But here's the cool part. We all have ancestors that actually were before that. If we go way, way back, we've got ancestors before that. So, all right, all of this. So you do carry this DNA. It's showing up. It's fascinating. I had one of my students that said, Linda, how do I know my ancestor stuff is showing up? You know, what are the symptoms? How would it show up? So I'm going to read off a whole long list of things. And you go, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. Sometimes people will say that they feel haunted by something they can't name. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something happening with it. Grief. So I announced when I started on this, I had a lot of grief about my mom that I couldn't be there. Well, lo and behold, as I did my ancestor work, what I found out is that I'm the oldest, and it ended up being my sister stepped in, who is the second. Same thing happened to my aunt. My aunt was the second one down. She started taking care of my mom. Intergenerational trauma. It's like you're in a lawsuit. It's like, why am I in this lawsuit? My dad was in a lawsuit. My grandpa was in a lawsuit. Is that weird? Or nightmares, depression. I had a woman, Judy, I don't think it was, it wasn't, maybe it was your trip. There was a woman that came to the jungle, I think it was with us, and where she said, when she did her introduction, she said, I have this constant deep depression. And then as she was doing her work and had some dream time with it, showed up in a dream, what she recognized as her ancestors, I'm talking about her literal ancestors, were part of the Salem witch trials, were burned at the stake. And she said, I feel like I can never talk to anybody about my spiritual work. I always have to keep it hidden. And she goes, I feel like it's a no-win. Like if I talk about it, I'll be killed. But if I don't talk about it and I don't step into my personal work, I know I'm going to get sick, I'm going to get ill, and I'm going to die. It's like this no-win that was set up with it. So depression, anxiety with it, family shame. There was some shame stuff, guilt, despair, rage, silence, hidden things, like the things that are hidden and not talked about, or, being silent about them. We don't talk about that in this family. And I'm going to say physical illnesses. And there's a lot of research that shows just think about it. When you go to the doctor, those are all those forms you fill out. How did this show up back in your lineage line? How does it show up with your mom? How does this show up with your dad? Those are exactly the things you notice that run in your family. Exact same kind of thing with it. So, and then trauma, it also shows up from these ancestors in your current relationships. Sometimes we'll actually pick partners that show us our patterns that need to be healed, that are in our families, shows up in your work life. So whether it's obstacles or if there's things that need to be healed, it'll show up as financial burdens or a financial poverty mindset with it. So if there's particularly things like on your father's side or way back in there, or even I can't ever make enough money you can't make more money than your mom. You can't make more money than your dad. Women are not supposed to work. All of that gets passed down. These are the beliefs that get passed down with it. Man, one more, and then we're going to change directions. And one more, then is the whole place of the mother bond. And there's lots of researches from the therapy standpoint about the attachment theory with the mother bonding that you have to have. Okay, but try this on. How important the mother bond is actually one of the most prevalent and unrealized traumas. So it's so critical, the mom part, because we were within our mom for those 9 to 10 months with it. So we have that bond that's very much connected. But let's go back. Remember, grandma, you were that precursor in your mom that was in your grandma. So there was lots of stuff happening back with your grandma. Let's just pretend the depression. My grandma had 6 kids. Her husband left. She had to go to work. So she's got babies at home. So life happens. I have a client who's very close to her mom. She had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful mom. When she was 3 months old, 2 months old, her mom got pregnant, but she was like an O negative. And she was told that if she had that baby, she was going to die. So her mom was in constant stress and just fear. So she couldn't be there for her child. So if grandma couldn't have been there for your mom, that was passed down. That's that trauma, then mom can't be there for you. And unconsciously that will be orchestrated. So it doesn't matter if your parent was a good parent or not. It's about this unconscious orchestration that happens that separates that bond. So what we have to do is we have to go absolutely away from no blame, no victim, no anything, no triangle disempowerment. Everybody's doing the best they could with the resources they have. It's just passed down from the lineage. Everybody's fine. Everything's okay with it. And then it's all fascinating because some of the memories, even of what's happening from your mom when you were little tiny, your brain can't make memories when you're tiny. So you don't even know why. You don't even know what's happening because there's not even a memory behind it with it. So again, and then it shows up, those things with our moms show up in our yearning. So whether it's yearning from a significant other or ordering from Amazon or a glass of wine, a bag of chips, whatever it is that your yearning is that we end up trying to fill that void that we never could because mom never could, because grandma never could, because great grandma never did, because great grandma never did, because great grandma never did. So when you recognize that, it's like, oh my gosh, let me recognize that I lost this connection to the Mother Earth. And that's where we need to go back and gain that connection to the Mother Earth and then allow that healing to happen all the way down the lineage line. So that's one more quick story. So years ago, I was teaching shamanism to a whole class of therapists. So, which is really super cool. I was back east, I think at Menla. And in that, I thought, oh, what a great opportunity. I'm going to ask these therapists, how many of them, when somebody comes in to see them, that it's a family issue. Now, we know karma, we know spiritual things, we know all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, maybe 70%, 75%. So I had it, and it's a room full of therapists. 100% of the time. I said, how many that it goes back to your family? 100% of the time. And even I had a work thing several years ago, and I'm in with my therapist, talk about it. And she's like, okay, Linda, now let's talk about your family patterns. It's like, now let's see how this lives within your family with it. And therapy is wonderful. So please hear me. I think it's absolutely amazing. You heard that I go, it helps you understand what happened. And again, I'm going to say, remember, if it's little tiny, when you were little tiny, you may not have a memory of what happened with it. So the language may not be there, or in a lot of intense trauma situations, the language isn't there. It's just feelings. It's just feelings that go with it, emotions that go with it. So therapy's great to understand, but if you want healing from the trauma, if you want healing down your lineage, it takes different tools. Absolutely different tools with it. And those tools include movement, dance, singing. I'm going to talk about spiritual traditions that they have dance as part of it. They have movement as part of it. There's chanting and singing that are part of that. EMDR works in a different way with the brain. Bert Hellinger's constellation work. You're working in a different way. You're working with movements and formation. And Bert's is fascinating to me. The constellation work is fascinating because actually what he did is he was a Jesuit priest. He's stationed over in Africa, and he spent 16 years with the Zulu. And what he noticed when he was with the Zulu is that they didn't have ancestor issues. They didn't have family issues. They worked it out. Their ancestors were there to help them. So and Bert he was invited, and he attended a whole bunch of their ceremonies around the ancestors and how you work with the ancestors. Then he came back to the States. He went over to Europe, or from Europe, quit the church, or like quit being an active role, and then took hypnotherapy. Some people here have that. He actually took NLP, took Gestalt. He took all these things, then made them into his constellation work. And his constellation work very clearly is that in your system, in your family system, everyone is included. What happens I'm going to do this like the system. what happens is we'll have individuals in the system that are miscarriages, abortions, deaths that we alienate out. We have forgotten them and we don't include them. So let me tell a family story with it, just so it would make sense with it. So I come from a family of 4 kids. We're each a year apart. So my older brother, I'm number 2. So my older brother, from about 3 years on, maybe about 4 years on, all of our family pictures, there's 3 kids over here and then there's my brother. 3 kids over here and there's my brother. Picture after picture after picture after picture after picture after picture. And my brother and I have had some, it hasn't been an easy relationship, has not been an easy relationship. Well, recently my mom did pass and we were with family and we were doing a family memorial. And my dad was a college professor and at that time sponsored he sponsored an exchange student from Kenya. And John, wonderful human being. He ended up being Barack Obama's personal physician. So we're Mayo, like very great guy. So John comes because John was very close to the family. And he's telling us, this is my mom's memorial service. He tells us 4, and the grandkids and stuff were there. He tells us 4 that he's the oldest son. And he said, you guys need to know this. I am the oldest. I am the oldest. And I stood with your dad. Now here's my brother, little teeny tot, like 3 years old, 2 years old. And here's John, that's my dad. My dad did this. Great human, wonderful, amazing human being, counselor, therapist. A teacher, my dad announced to the world that John was his oldest. And then here's my son, Roy. That's my brother, Roy. Well, what happened was Roy lost his spot. Roy was kicked out. No wonder he's been upset with me. I have been treated my whole life as if I was the oldest. I was always made, you take care of the kids, Linda, everything. Whole life, I've been treated as the oldest, the trustee, everything. Roy lost his spot. Roy lost his spot. So when I realized this with the constellation work, when we were together after the memorial service, John left and we had a discussion and used some stones to represent that. You can do this for yourself at home. I'll tell another story with it from someone, one of my co-teachers. We put down all the stones and I said, John said he was the oldest and and I said, that's not true. And I moved John out. And I said, Roy, you are the oldest. This is your place. This is your place. You are the oldest. I am number 2. There's me. Then my other siblings all put their little pieces with it. My brother, over the next 2 days, probably came up to me 8 or 9 times and said, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. It's like his place. So constellation work, everyone has an order and everyone has a place. And that's what you want to have in your families. You want to know that everybody is included in the family with it. One of my co-teachers of this work, when she looked at her constellation pieces, she realized how many people disappeared in her family. It's like they were there and then the uncle was gone. Nobody ever talked about him again. Grandpa was gone. Nobody talked about him again. Like their place was gone out of the system. So that's Hellinger work. That's constellation work. Very important. You can go home and do it. Go home and do it. Put some little rocks out? Who's in your order? Who's in your family system? Because we want to have that family system that's all in place. And then the reason that we want to have them in place is you want to know who they are. Because, and I'm going to say many of you here actually have and can feel that you're here to help heal those ancestors. You're here to allow that healing to happen, the patterns to shift, that they are here to change, that those patterns are open to shifting with it, that you're actually the ancestor that volunteered and said, I will take this on. I will step in. I will allow and help hold my family. Look at the spiritual work you do. I know many of you start with a science background, but you do spiritual work. This is this combination. So how do you take the epigenetics and then allow this healing to happen? And that's the tools. And that's a tool. And our ancestors didn't have the space or the time to do the healing work. It wasn't even okay to go see a therapist, to even work those pieces, let alone do the deep spiritual work was not as held by your family system like you can do it. So very first thing you want to do is you want to bring awareness. What's there? That's awareness. And then where do you get triggered? Like, what are your family systems? What are the things? What are the words that are floating in there? Sometimes they're poverty that's back there, or that you can't have that. Life has to be hard. One of my clients, her dad was on the beach at Normandy. And she said, Linda, everything in my family has to be hard. It just has to be hard. There is no ease. And the other thing, her mom was a nurse, and there has to be suffering. It just has to be hard, and there has to be suffering. And there is always poverty. There's no abundance. That's just the family system. That's just the family makeup that goes with it. So sometimes you'll find that you'll have the words, or it's showing up in your life. Sometimes it's showing up in dream time, or with like ayahuasca. Sometimes it is showing up the things that distract you. Like it's like where you don't want to look at something, like, oh, let me go do this instead. It's like, oh, I don't want to look at my family patterns. Let me go do this. Or like where you push it away. So my shamanic teaching had been to push it away. Like, oh, I can't cope with all that. So got really resourceful over here. Let me just put it over there. Part of that family system on my mom's side never had any really good boundaries. So I was actually seeing a psychic number of years ago, medium, and she goes, your mom has showed up 12 times and I keep sending her away and she's still showing up. So what you do, so here's your tool. And Judy has a free gift for me where you can download how to do this. So
I'm going to put it in the chat. Sorry, the chat is disabled. Just so for those of you who joined late, for whatever the reason, the chat is disabled. So we're using the Q&A tab, and I will put it there, and I will also put it on the YouTube page. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're so great. So Judy's going to put in a step-by-step for you with it. And here's the thing to remember is that sometimes when these things, when you actually step into it the first time, I look at it, they can be a little wild and crazy, like a little feral. Like, they've never come to the table before. They've never been invited before. And when you invite them to show up, it can look like my mom didn't have, like in that lineage line, there wasn't boundaries. So the tool that shifted things in my life, and then the tool that shifted things in my clients. Again, my coaching clients are saying, Linda, this is hands down the thing that's made a big difference to my life. I want to convince you how important to go do this. I'm going to tell you another story. So one of my clients is 80 years old. She's so sweet, spiritually open, had done lots of work, personal work, a therapist in her background. And the other day she said, Linda, I thought I would never, ever had a chance to be one with God. I know people talk about that, I've always wanted that, but I didn't think I would ever have it this lifetime. I didn't think that was going to be part of my walk this lifetime. And she's broken to tears, and she said she'd taken a class, and she said, for the first time in my life, I had a one connection with God. I had an ultimate connection with God. And she says it's because of the ancestor work. It's because of the ancestor work that I did. So I'm going to say a little bit more about her with it. She, one of the things in this ancestor work that she did is it includes working with your exes and working with your partners, your spouses, your significant others, particularly if you've got kids. And her ex had died he's been dead for a while, like 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. So when I told her that she had to work with them, she goes, you have got to be kidding. I am not going to work with him. He was so blah, 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 blah. And she goes, so she did the work. She used the tool. And when she did that, she recently had a family reunion, and his side of the family came. paid for it on their own. They showed up. It was in Bali, showed up, and her brother-in-law said, I have always loved you, and I am so sorry for any of the pain. I am so sorry for everything that happened. And then he connected with all of the grandkids. And there was a few other members from that side that all showed up. And it was all in this place of coming into right relationship. And there was healing that happened with her grandkids, with her kids. And she said, I never expected to be in a relationship with my grandkids. My son had stepped away. So like miraculous kind of healing again and again and again. So hopefully I'm convincing you to use this tool with it. So first thing, we identify what it is. Then we bring that awareness, and then we bring it to honoring. Recognize everything back here. Again, there's no blame. In so many places, like we want to find what happened that's wrong. That was my mom's fault. That was my dad's, or my great grandpa's fault because of the war. No blame. What we want to do is we just want to bring it to acknowledgement and honoring. And everybody here that walks that spiritual path, that if you can come into every spiritual tradition, if you can come into right relationship with what is, you can create anything. You can create anything if you can come into right relationship with what is. So you pull up with what is, and then you actually put it in an altar. And it's called an ancestor altar. And what you bring to this ancestor altar is you bring praise and honoring. And that's it. You don't bring any give me, change, go do this, go make that better. There's no anything else. It's praise and honoring. So I mentioned that Bert Hellinger went to and studied and worked with the Zulu for 16 years. So this last year I went to Africa and studied with a Sangoma. And I love his prayer. And that's what's actually in your free gift is a step-by-step how you can make an ancestor altar. Step-by-step how you can do your own ancestor altar. So in studying with the Sangoma elder, he had a beautiful, beautiful prayer that he says. And that's actually the one that's in that where it really is. And his name is John Lockley. I'm going to take another trip with them if you want to go to Africa, probably 2024, where you create your ancestor altar. I have a step-by-step that's in your free. It's has a cloth if you want. And then you can put beautiful genealogy stuff in it. My altar actually started, it's this massive, my husband was working up in Alaska. So I took over the kitchen table while he was gone. That's what I did. Took over the whole kitchen table, put a beautiful cloth on that, put my genealogy, I put pictures, I put a candle, I put some incense. Now, when I first called that my mother's lineage to the table, oh my gosh, I said it can be feral. Now it could have happened, but I never heard anything really positive growing up about that side. I never heard or if I did, I discounted it. I'm like, oh yeah, but you left 7 kids and so whatever I did inside. So when they first came to the table, there was tons and tons of sadness. So I had to put a grief altar in there. And if you go to my website, it works. Really, really strong, powerful process that helps shift the grief. And so I put a grief altar inside my ancestor altar because there was so much sadness. And I also put a really strong boundary. Remember, I heard that line that said, that's why I kept pushing them away, is because the boundaries weren't good. So I had to put a really strong boundary to say, I welcome you, but not here in my life, not here in my body. None of the physical things from that lineage, none of the mental things from the lineage, none of the depression, none of the sadness, none of that here. Go to my altar. Here's home. And it took a little bit to get, there was no boundaries to say, now of course, I don't need boundaries around anything now, because as they learned, oh, this is where I go for praise and honoring, then of course so you may need boundaries is what I'm saying. I use some cornmeal. You can use a rope. You can use a string. You can use anything to stones, anything you want to create a boundary with it. I put some books my dad wrote. I put, just everything from the lineages in there. And before I go to the prayer, the honoring prayer, let me tell you a few stories with it. So one of the stories, I had created this big, massive altar, invited everybody there. And then I had a doctor's appointment over in Eugene, and I'm on the coast. So it was a couple hours away, really hot in the summertime. So I didn't want to take the dog. So I did my dog sitter. And I thought, oh, she's going to think this is weird, isn't she? Oh, so I took a big towel, or whatever sheet, and I covered my altar. I get over to Eugene. I spend 2-hour drive over there. 20 minutes before my appointment, it gets canceled. But, oh, okay, that's all right. I'll just go to Trader Joe's and I'll pick up some groceries. The air conditioning stops on my truck and it's 98 degrees. And I usually have really, really good traffic mojo. Like, I can do the flow, and I had no flow, like it was gone. So I'm stuck at 98 degrees in traffic. And finally I pulled over and like, what the hey? Like, what? My life doesn't do this. Like, how? What's going on in my life? My ancestors was just like so clear. Here, I'd invited him to the table. And then I said, oops, let's hide you. Now, I thought it was because of the dog sitter, but what was unconscious underneath all that? Again, that putting him off to the side, not allowing him to be present. So lesson learned, invite him to be present. And then it also requires you to walk with integrity. So during this time period, my mom, same lineage line, my mom's getting old. My mom's in at the nursing home, and my brother and I are calling the three, remember, my brother and I are calling my sister all the time because she was showing some health things that were mom's, and just supporting her as she was doing this journey with it. Well, it would end up as the three of us were on the phone together. Same thing that happens at Thanksgiving with you guys when you sit with your siblings, or Christmas. Sometimes you end up saying things about that family lineage, about some crazy behaviors, about whatever was showing up in my mom, and would end up a little bit of a bashing party. And I finally talked to him. I said, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I go to praise and honoring every day, sometimes twice a day, to my ancestor altar, bring praise and honoring to that lineage line. I can't turn around and say bad things. That's not of integrity. It's not of integrity that if I'm going to bring praise and honoring, it's praise and honoring only. None old stories in my head, no blame, no mental, emotional old things, only praise and honoring. Only that deep understanding everybody was doing the best with the resources they had. They didn't have a lot of resources, but they were all doing the very, very best. So it made me. So I'm going to say that there's that second lesson for you guys. Reminder, you have to then walk with integrity. Really. And it's awesome that Thanksgiving and Christmas Day of the Dead's coming up to remind us to walk with integrity with this. So in the altar, it's an ongoing feeding, honoring. Mine went from the kitchen table down to a card table, over to a different kind of altar, back to the kitchen table. So, and it's right now, mine's on a prayer bench. So it'll vary with all those sides with it. So here's your prayer. And it's in your ancestor altar handout that you have, the step-by-step. It's from John Lockley, and it says, I honor and praise Great Spirit. Whatever words you want to use. I honor and praise the divine. I honor and praise the collective unconscious. I honor and praise God. Whatever works for you. It's like, let's honor and praise what we all know, and science shows that greater connection. Bring honor and praise to that. And call on who you are. My name is. So I say, my name is Linda Lee Weldon Fitch. And then if you have any other spiritual names, if you walk any other spiritual paths, you can name those. You can name if you have a spiritual path with it. And then I honor and praise my mother and her people. So for me, it's Arvelda, Pearl, Piment. Honor and praise all the Piments and all the Mortimers. And if you go further back, go further back. And then I honor and praise my father, Lynn Leroy Weldon, all the Weldons, all of the Potter's, all of the Smiths. Now here's the other one. And this is why you do it. I honor and praise my partner, my spouse, my significant other, whatever you want to say, their full name. So mine says Todd Allen Fitch, all the Fitches and all of the Burgreys. I've got kids with him. And so everything epigenetically is affecting from that line is affecting my kids. So if there is trauma in his parents' line, it's showing up on my kids. And I really want to make sure that they live a life of abundance, that they live emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, that they have everything. So spouse, partner, onto that. If you have the ex, this is where my client brought her ex in. Then she came into right relationship. She took her ex off. So if you have a really strong desire not to have your ex there, I'm going to tell you what one of my clients said. You're telling me I'm going to put what on there? No, but her daughter was getting married, and she knew her ex would never step forward to help pay, and just knew that. And so I'm like, yeah, he's absolutely got to go on. And so it did, came into right relationship. He paid for half the wedding. She ended up taking him off the altar. But that unfinished business was complete. It was done. She was okay with everything. And then I honor and praise all my teachers. So whoever your teachers are, whoever your spiritual teachers are, many of you walk really amazing paths. Who has been your spiritual teachers? Honor and praise to those. They've brought all these benefits in your life. You honor and praise that. And then eventually, as that healing happens, as those ancestors come into right relationship, they're actually here to help you. And that's what the coolest thing is to me. If they're here to help you, they're here to help your kids, they're here to help your grandkids, and that you can ask for their assistance. And that's part of it. And that's part of the prayer that's in your booklet. I ask Great Spirit, all my ancestors, to please open the road for me so I can see clearly, speak clearly, walk clearly, so I can realize my destiny in this world and the next. When I have a project I'm working on, I light my incense, I light my candle, I call on my ancestors, and I say, I'm working on this project. Let me be a clear conduit. Let me get my ego out of the way. Let me say what needs to be said in a way that's understandable. So very much in bringing in that place of, please come help. Please come help. And that's actually your goal, is that the family system, everybody's present with the family system, that as you go into Thanksgiving, as you go into Christmas, as you go further on, that everybody feels included. Everybody feels honored, everybody feels supported, and everybody feels like they're part of, and that then it's a relationship of joy and love and connection, and then that spiritual oneness. Then you can really, as you're no longer having to worry about healing the old traumas that show up, you're actually just spending all your energy of connection to God. One of my clients, the same one that had the wedding that didn't want to put her ex on the altar, she said, Linda, because of this work, this ancestor work, I'm spontaneously breaking into tears. I am blown away and in awe with the amazement of my life. She goes, I'll be reading a book, I look up and burst into tears. I'll be cooking dinner and I look up and I burst into tears. And it's just that this is what our life is here to be, that you're always in this awe and wonder of the miracle of life and that deep connection to spirit, and very much in this material world where you can everything that you want in the material world too. Your ancestors will help you have that financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically. They're all there to help you on your journey. So that was a lot of words, Judy. That was a lot of words.
But fantastic, just fantastic. And I have a question for you about that. I was thinking about your kitchen table and this kind of massive altar that you have, and then you said you moved it around, right? So how do you do that? How do you know when you're finished? Right, you sense a sort of shift in the in energy, and then you want to move it to a prayer bench, or you want to move it to a windowsill, or something like that. It sounds like yours is really dynamic, and how do you do that respectfully without, because you had this massive one, right? I assume this massive one is not on the prayer bench, right?
No, no,
You've
it was the whole kitchen table. It was
right,
like,
right, and you've distilled it down into, but without excluding anyone, right?
right, right. So, and actually, let me tell you a couple stories with this, because you can even put it like, if you have grandkids around, or it's not appropriate. I've had people that live with other people where it's not really appropriate. I have a little show and tell. Here, I'm going to grab it. It's heavy, so let me just grab it. And I
And
think
I just want to say, Linda, for anyone who's listening, if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. You can click a little button that says raise your hand. So go ahead and start typing your questions if you have them. Okay.
so first off, it doesn't need to be big.
Okay.
So this is actually an ancestor altar. This is from the Africa tradition with it. So when it's just earth, and you ask the earth, has a candle, and it has some incense with it. And I happen to be a stone carrier like you are.
Mhm.
So I just have stones around the outside. So I'll light this and I'll light that. And then I'll just do the same prayers of honor. This is an ancestor altar.
And do you ever use stones from your mesa? Do you ever
No.
put them in for any? Okay, no.
No, I just, because I keep my ancestor altar separate, my mesa stone. Not that I sometimes don't work with it. Last night I did a talk, had them work with a gratitude ceremony, and I put that little stone over there, just holding gratitude. And so I'm going to do one more story. Yes, pictures. So you can do pictures in your ancestor altar. So when I first made it, again, I had never been invited to the table before. So I had pictures, I had big stacks of genealogy, I had all those kind of things that, depending on if you were the one in the family that collects those and has those. Right now I have earrings that are from some jewelry from my grandma. So I did have pictures. Some traditions, and there is lots of ancestor work out in the world, like lots of other cultures do ancestor work. This isn't new. There's other shamans do ancestor work. I'm a simple person, so I try to keep it super simple. So that's what I'm trying to give you, tools that are super simple. So in the big one, in the honoring, one of the reasons is I went smaller is my husband was coming home and I knew we wanted the kitchen table back. So then he went, okay, where can I put it? So then it moved to my office, and then it was kind of looking at it and seeing what needed to be on the table now. So, things had shifted, what needed to come to the table now. Boundary didn't have to be as much, so my boundary lessened down a lot with it. And then just sensing into, there was some, you can also put flowers on it. You can put chalices of water on it. There's something that's called besides the grief altar, it's called the well of grief, where you could put stones and water that hold grief. So I was at my altar every day, morning and night. Actually, part of the guy I went to Africa with, John, he actually asked us to go down on our knees. That's a really different place at your ancestor altar, to be down on your knees. So I was at the altar all the time. So things were coming on and things were coming off. And then when it consolidated down, then I went into the to the card table. I have one of my clients, she and her partner put their ancestor altar in the closet. And it was she inherited a lot of money. One of them inherited a lot of money from her dad, but had a lot of strings attached to it. It's like you had to be the certain way in order to have this money. And so she couldn't even connect to this gorgeous, beautiful house she had because it had so many strings. So she was done tons of honoring around her dad, and her dad loved bourbon, a really good bourbon. So she had bourbon up on the ancestor altar, and they go up in the closet, open the door. And one of them was telling me she'd poured the bourbon. She'd had a glass of bourbon at night, and then she was walking away, closed the closet door. She's walking down the hallway, and she gets very clearly in Dad's voice, open. And I don't know if there was a dam in there or not, but open the closet. So I went back over the closet. So make your altar wherever it works. It can be big, it can be small. It's a living thing. So, I'm not going to put the flowers started to die. I'm going to take them off the altar. I'm going to change out the candle, use my very favorite incense. So it's malleable, like it's a living thing with it. And you'll notice when things need to shift, like I was working with a client and I couldn't remember my mom's family name. And I had done tons and tons and tons and tons of work. And I thought, okay, I need to go back and do more honoring. I need to bring some more things out. So whether it shows up in dream time, in thoughts, or whatever, they'll communicate with you. When you open that door, they'll show up. They'll show up. Again, praise and honoring, praise and honoring, praise and honoring, praise and honoring.
That was my question, because I know you to be a master tracker, right? You're going to notice these things, but for someone who's just starting, you said when you did your ancestor altar for your mother's side and they came and it was sort of a chaotic energy, right?
Yeah.
How would that show up? How do you know?
Okay, so
when your air conditioner goes out in your car.
well, you definitely know that, and you drop inside like, what the heck is happening in my life? So there was one of the times when I was working on a project I needed to get something done for work, and actually was part of this ancestor work, but was also coming up time for the memorial service for my mom. We were cleaning out storage units, finding boxes of family stuff that was in the garage. And I was just getting totally consumed. Like energetically, I couldn't get off the couch. I just wanted to sit and read books on my Kindle. Like I could not get off the couch and go work. And I'm like, I had these deadlines. I had a talk coming up that was there was a great conference on beliefs and religion. Amazing. Oh, because we haven't even touched on when there's religion in the family. We haven't even talked about that. So and back down your lineage line, lots of religion back down. I have a lot of door-to-door missionaries back in my lineage line. So, and anyway, so I couldn't get anything done. I literally couldn't get anything done. I was like, what is going on? And I was just all consumed. Like they just, so I took my altar. Here I've got this great big altar, and it could be small altar. I just am saying what was happening in my life at that time. And what I did is I said, I split it in half. And I pushed all my family stuff over to one side. And I said, I will honor, and I'm going to keep honoring you guys. I'm not trying to hide you. I'm going to keep doing my honoring work. I had like boxes of stuff, of generational stuff that was like popping out of my garage. Like, okay, I'm going to honor you guys. I had incense, I had candle, I had flowers, I had a grief altar. I mean, like this big massive stuff. It looked like chaos, right? I put a rope, and I used some of my meteorites, very strong stones. I used all my little elephant statues because they're the part of the ancestors. They're part of the ancestor line. I put some pieces of wood there that were from the baobab tree and from our tree in Peru. So the ceiba tree. So I put all these here and said, that's got to stay there. I'm going to keep doing that, but I need to work. I got deadlines. I got things I got to get done over here. I knew what I need to get done. Over here, I put a Buddha, put a candle, I put some incense, I put several of the different paths, so it was very much Santa Muerte I put over there. Very much this interdominational, very global. It's like, this is the work I'm doing in the world. This is my calling for the world, and I need to be over here working. I love you guys. I'm going to keep working here, honoring and praise over here. And I don't even say take love, just honoring and praise over here. And then this is what I need to be do. Within 20 minutes, maybe half an hour of me doing that, Judy, I sat down to my computer and I worked for 3 days straight. Emails, things written, cranking out what I needed, what I knew I needed to get done. This was taking over everything. And I had to say, let me, and I still lit my candle, still did my incense, did my prayers, and I needed the space to work.
You had your boundary, right? You put your boundary there.
Unbelievable.
It's such astounding work, this energetic work, and it's it's not explainable to the rational mind, right? And that's part of what I love about it. Let me ask you about, I'm not even sure how to ask the question, but so my mother is older. She is preparing to become an ancestor, right? I mean, she's ready. And I am wondering about how to use an ancestor altar to open the way for her transition. I mean, is that can you use them like that, right? To bring that power of the lineage to welcome her as she transitions out of body. Is it the same? Is it the same kind of practice?
It is. And sometimes I get the question of, can I put a living person in the ancestor altar? Technically, they're not your ancestors. Like when they cross over, they move over there. But as you say, we want these ancestors where they are welcoming your mom and they're any of those old things. So sometimes there's things back in those ancestors where we don't want to join them because there's old stuff there. You know, like there's old stuff with her mom, or there's old, like with grandma, like whatever the old trauma is back there that needs to come into right relationships. So then it is open, and then she is open to receive that with it. So that would be for sure what you want to do is work the pieces. I'm going to give one more tool here. And oh, who does this come from? I'm sorry, I don't remember. I don't have it in front of me, but it's an amazing tool. And you can tell I wasn't ready for it. So here's my flip chart. So what you can do is you can create an infinity sign. So sometimes back in our ancestors, and I'm just going to use this as an example, mom and dad or grandma and grandpa that never really got along. So it's like, it's not just down the line, it's like between two people. Like there's that unhealed business between the two people. And sometimes when I just did a in-person class back east on ancestor work, the number one word was powerful. And one woman said that she would always, she realized that she would get car sick as a kid. So she had to sit up front by the window because it forced her mom and dad to sit next to each other. And she goes, I was trying to get them to get along. So sometimes we'll have individuals that don't necessarily get along. So I did this one with my brother. Like I definitely, as we step back into everything, wanted that to be a healed relationship. So you make your infinity sign. You could do it a bunch of times. You could do it with a rope, a whole bunch of crayons, markers. And then you put where with an open heart, this is like, it's not like one person needs to change to meet your ego. You put the picture or just the name of one of the individuals there and the name of the other individual there. So maybe it was mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whatever it was, or there's somebody way back in your mom's line that has died. And she's like, I never liked him. Don't want anything to do with that. Or there's something that was the old, and you can create this. And what I did is I actually put my picture on one side and I put my brother's picture on the other side. And then I put and then you put a candle right in the center and you light the candle. And what it is you want this to come into right relationship. All you're doing is you're creating a space. And that right relationship isn't through here. It isn't through here. It isn't through those kind of things. It's a space in the same way the ancestor altar is a space for the healing to happen, the pattern to shift, the right relationship to come in.
I love that distinction, right? That you're not trying to force your idea of how things should be, right? But just kind of creating that space for harmony to emerge.
Yeah.
Really important. That's wonderful. And you said
up with your mom.
What's that?
that answered enough about your mom.
It is. Yeah, that's great. You put the grief altar, your grief altar, on your ancestor altar if you felt that you needed it. By the way, the grief altar, super powerful. On Linda's webpage, there's a little 6-minute video about how to make a grief altar. One of the most powerful practices I've ever seen. Really amazing. But so you use it for a short period of time? Or do you ever just kind of pull it out and say, hey, if there's any excess grief, to kind of throw it in there?
Yep, absolutely. And then it's kind of that it'll float in and it'll float out. So when I first opened and invited these ancestors that hadn't been asked to the table, and there was so much sadness around that with it, and the sadness of whatever happened back there, like there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of stuff that happened back there. So when I invited them in, there was a lot of sadness, and it had to have a grief altar. It was like it just needed to continue to work that. And then my grief altar was out. And then when my mom died, then, I put a grief altar back in the ancestor altar that I had, and made more as my mom transitioned from in person over to ancestor. And I'm looking over my prayer bench over there. I have my grief altar on it. I see that. So it's one that is, I have a client that's an attorney, and she uses a grief altar all the time because clients come in for her and they're sharing like whatever tragedies that they're sharing. And she doesn't want to have that energy in her office or on her body. And so she'll use a grief altar just to help shift that. Yeah. So comes in and out as needed. Yeah.
Yeah, and Donna Lee talked about, just having all these beautiful bowls around her house and realizing, oh, well, I can use those for my altar. Yeah, I used just things around your house that call to you, right? That, because I've done that, where I sort of look around and then something will catch my eye and I'll go, oh, that must want to be on the altar, right?
You have an ancestor altar, right?
I do. Yeah. And I just made one. I just put one in my mom's house. And I told her it was for Day of the Dead.
Right.
And I invited all my siblings, actually, if they come over and they want to add something or change out a photo or, something to make it kind of living and dynamic. So I'll report back to you about how that goes.
And what's so wonderful about that is then it is because again, greatest trauma is that connection to the earth. But what it does is it allows those people to be present for your mom, right. to bring up memories, to talk about them, to, and part of the process, as when somebody get closer and closer to crossing, then those veils become thinner and thinner. And then of course, with Day of the Dead, they're thinner. So it's that place of having those discussions and seeing those ancestors and having that, like setting the table for them.
Right. Well, and welcoming them. So I don't see a lot of questions. I don't know if people are just, you're so clear. You're such a great teacher. Maybe all of the questions are answered as you're speaking. So I'm going to say last call for questions.
Well, and I guess the only other thing I would announce, so you heard how passionate I am about this, when every client's lives, like they really, like even with your mom and everything was shifting, I've actually put this into a program, and right now I just opened it up yesterday. I can do a screen share. You want me to screen share?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
This is just to say, because some people might be interested. And this is it. It's healing grief and trauma in your family lineage, blood and bones, same way we're talking about it here with it. And it's a mini course for massive transformation. I love that. Mini course for massive transformation. So I've taken this plus a bunch of exercises and put them in an online format. And then what I did, Judy, is I stacked it with bonuses. What I really wanted to do, and it really is, as this shift that's happening in the world, and I know FMBR has been here for a long time, but it's this shift that's happening in the world. I really think it's important that we allow this to heal, because that's what's going to allow us to do the transformation. As we do this next leap, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, as we do this next leap, I think it's this, we have to heal these old patterns. They have to allow them, give them a space to allow that all to come into right relationship. And I think that's part of this big transmutation that we're doing this big. So I loaded it because I so called to it. What I did is I loaded it with a gazillion bonuses, really, really amazing bonuses. That ancestor, easy guide to an ancestor altar is part of it, and grounding exercises, just tons and tons and tons of bonuses. And then I put it at a really super simple price. I tried to make it less than a cup of coffee, like a daily cup of coffee is what I did
Nice.
for a month. So if anybody's interested in that, we'll do a whole bunch of exercise, or you'll have exercises to do. It's got a coach, it's got a Facebook group, and it'll all be online. So instead of doing it all live, I made it online, but there's a coaching group. So you always have a chance to do that.
I love that. So you can sort of compare notes.
Yes. Yes. And then get individual help with it. So handouts, the whole thing. So, you know, me and my teaching. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think, you know, one of the ways to heal that separation is the creation of community, right? And that's what's important.
And within it, there's one of my co-teachers that I was talking about, like where her family all disappeared. She did a beautiful journey, because this is the other thing you can do. She created a journey where you go back and you connect with an ancestor that never got kicked out of the garden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It still has those earth traditions, that was never separated. And then they actually come forward and they're here to help work with your ancestors.
Right.
They're here to help you. So it's like you have that back there. So that's part of it too, is this this connection and and an ancestor journey where you actually connect with that ancestor that is whole and still connected to the earth.
Yes, I have a friend who refers to that person as the wise and well ones.
Yes.
In your ancestor lineage, you know, because I think we tend, if it's just our time or our society, we tend to focus on trauma and you know, the dysfunction in our lineage, but we all have people in our lineage who are wise and well in spirit, right? And who were wise and well in their lives. And I love the idea of contacting them as a resource, you know, bringing them forward and asking for their help.
Yeah, that are connected back to the earth. They have everything that we need. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Sabine, I think she wanted to know if all the videos were online live.
It'll be online.
Okay.
Then that way, I want to do it. So, because I know lives are busy, you know, like you want to drop in and you want to do it. But somebody's like, well, I want more accountability. And it's like, if you want accountability, then Gabrielle, my coach, will give you accountability. Don't worry about that. You know, like you can have everyday check-in if you want. So yeah.
Oh, okay. And not on Zooms. No, they're not, these are not Zoom. Oh, okay. Margarita says, what if it's not a grief or trauma, but similar feature in love and marriage keeps going on at least for 3 generations on the female line? You talked about that, kind of reenacting that pattern.
Yeah. So first off is identifying the pattern with it. So, and then acknowledging it. You know, it's like, okay, so identification, acknowledging, awareness, then that acknowledging place with it, bring it to the altar with it. Then sometimes it is tools. One of those would be to look at constellation work, lay out little stones or seashells. Like, what is this that's happening back there? Here's you back all these generations, just to keep tracking it back generations to generations. Everybody's doing the best they can. Is there somebody that needs to go back into here? Like, is there a tool that you can bring to it? And then really and truly, if you bring it to the altar and to allow that honoring and praise, and just go, you guys need to work it out over here. You know, you're more incense, more candles, like, yeah,
I'm creating the
I've got an
space.
air purifier here in my office, you know, it's like more candles. You know, you bring all of that, you bring the praise and honoring and let that heal. Let it work, let it work, let it work, let it work. Yeah.
Okay, this is a question from YouTube. How does an adopted person work with an ancestral lineage, and how does one integrate those ancestors with those of birth family?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. The DNA, that's why I start with all the DNA and all the studies and stuff like that. Your DNA is your DNA. You have got to start there because you were in the womb for so long, and that those DNA, and you know, it's in the energy field, it's in your whole water, it's everywhere. So you start with that, and you just say, and for my mother's line, who I don't know the names of, and all of her parents, you know, that goes back further and further, that those that I even don't know. You still bring them to honoring and praise. You know, something happened. Something happened in all of our lines. You know, something happened. Bring that in there. So start with that. Then you can work in your, then it may be your adopted parents that you want to work in those. Sometimes people have spiritual lineages. I have a client who had who took on a very spiritual name, and now he wants to change his name, but he's not in right relationship with that lineage. So you might have a spiritual name that you need to bring honoring to. You might need to do a whole separate ancestral altar just for a spiritual name with it. And sounds weird, but this is shaman, right? So there may be a karmic line. It's not something I'm again, simple. But sometimes I have found, you know, that there was a past life or a karmic piece, a karmic line. So it's a client that had a past life piece that she needed to create an ancestor altar because in a past life, she had ancestors. And she was in a relationship with them. So she needed to come in a relationship with them. So, but it's not often. Like really start with your blood and bones, then work in the others, then work in the other pieces. But if you do your blood and bones, get a sense of that. Listen, be present, listen. I think that's what I had. It's the last step on creating an ancestor altar. Then listen. And then add the other pieces that you need to, but you want to get steady first. You want to get that DNA, and kind of what it is really, if we don't have an ancestor altar, this becomes the default. Your body becomes the default. Mm-hmm. And that's what you do not want. Your body you do not want to have your body. Again, remember those turning on and off the genes, the way they show up, the coding around it. So you do not want to have your body as the default for your ancestors. That's another reason to have that ancestor altars. Physically, here's where they show up. Here's where they show up. No arrhythmia here. No, whatever runs in your family, diabetic or heart or whatever. No, no depression. No, goes over to the ancestor altar. Honoring and praise, honoring and praise.
Super important. Okay, this is going to be the last question. This is from YouTube as well. What about an ancestor who has harmed me?
Oh, thank you. Oh, I am so first off, so sorry. First off, so sorry. My heart goes out to you. So I would definitely, if it, I'm going to answer it in two pieces with it. So in that place until you can get here, this is our personal work piece, our forgiveness work, or whatever, all those places with it. So start further back, you know, those places. So in no way does this honor and praise a behavior. That's not okay. Right. This is flat not okay. This is not honoring and praising okay with any behavior that is not acceptable.
Or excusing, right?
Or excusing, or in any, I could go on and on anyway in any of those places. Lots of great forgiveness practices, lots of, you know, pieces where we have to do a lot of our own personal work around that. It's about working with the system. And sometimes there are ancestors, again, even though they've died, they still have free will. And I've had a couple of clients, not very many, very, very few, but one of them had a KKK, Ku Klux Klan, back in her lineage with it. And he was high up in the Ku Klux Klan, did a lot of very, very horrible things, never had to atone for it, never had to. And when she brought him to her ancestor altar, her life got bad, like nightmares and all sorts of things like that. And again, it's they have free will. They have free will with it. You create a space for healing, and then they still have free will. So, and this may be what you would want to do for the ancestor that has harmed you. Again, we're not condoning any kind of behavior, but it's really holding that everybody's doing the best they could with the resources they had. In my family line too, girl, in my family line also. In my family line also. And with it, what she had to do, she walked a different spiritual lineage. So the one that had the KKK, she actually made a beautiful box, and it was held. She put her teacher of this other spiritual lineage, like pictures and images, in the box. Then she put her ancestor in the box in her mind's eye. Maybe she used something, or I don't know what she did. I don't remember. And then covered it, and then something around the outside, and then it went to the earth. Not in the earth, like, hey, you're a bad guy, you got to go to the earth, but in the place of this is where it needs to go for healing, is back to the Mother Earth. Let the mother hold it, let it go back here. And as soon as she did that, the nightmare shifted, all those kind of things changed for her.
That's
So
really important, those boundaries, right? This really kind of with your intention stating this is going to be here and not.
Yep, not here. This is here. And it, that you offer, and it's still choice, and it may not be this lifetime. So, and one of the things we're doing is we're shifting like thousands of years of survival coding when we do this, like everything, why we go to that negative is because that's all survival oriented. And this is what we're doing, is we're shifting all that. But that's the transformation I think we're doing. This is a transformation the earth is going through right now. This is what we're doing. And to go back to that connection of the earth so that we shift our practices with the earth.
I think so, right? We're moving from this dominant paradigm of competition and conquest and lack, to, and I think that's part of what we're doing here. What we're all doing here is moving the paradigm into co-creation and synergy and regeneration and compassion.
Yeah.
That's what I truly believe. So before I let you go, I want you to say once again how people can get a hold of you, how they can sign up for your course, because I have a question here. How do we sign up, and when does it begin?
So you can find me. So it's my name. I have an L in the middle. There's another Linda Fitch out in the world.
Okay.
For a while, I was giving her gift certificates, so she'd send me the emails, but now, so it's Linda L. Fitch. So it's www.lindalfitch.com, and you'll find me there. So that's my website. You'll find my picture. And if you look on the course here, I'm going to share my screen again. So you guys, I'm going to show you exactly where it is. Da-da-da. So sorry about that. You'll see under classes, it just says there's the class, Blood and Bones.
Okay.
And if you click on it, it's right there. And again, it's going to be all recorded. It'll be recorded. So I think it's available. I don't remember, you guys. I think it's available next week or in a week or so. Okay. So, yeah, and it'll have.
But you can register now, and then once you register, and when it goes live, then you will.
You'll get everything as soon as it's available.
And you'll be able to join the Facebook group.
Yes, and an invitation to join the Facebook. Gabrielle's my coach, and yeah, just a whole lot of wonderful bonuses besides the teaching. Teaching's great. Some of this you'll hear again. And then you will, all these really, really fun bonuses from this woman right here is so fascinating. So her name is Gemma Benton, and she's an Indigenous teacher. And actually what she identified is like, where you help people say, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I'm enough. Like we have these patterns that come up, and she talks about it from this place of that you can hear those patterns, like not belonging, not being included, being kicked out, and lots of journeys and step by step, and fire ceremonies and healing the financial trauma. So in the last weekend class, I had a lot of people that were really interested in that. How do those financial pieces show up? And my demo person back in her father's line, like she had a great grandfather or grandfather that inherited $1 million, but he blew it all. And so there was like this old, like she couldn't earn, like she had to actually ignore money in order to make anything, but never felt like she could actually understand. So there's a whole bunch of things about her value and all of that. So lots of stuff tied in with the financial abundance in the world with it. And there's a beautiful, Royal is a beautiful shaman from Denmark with it. And grief and loss with the wind work is also shamanism with it, and some stuff by John Lockley. Okay. I could talk a lot, so I love you.
Well, you know what? There was a comment here that, someone, Donna Lee, who said she's done altars for a long time, but your enthusiasm for this is just absolutely contagious and really inspiring. And so I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for this education and this inspiration. And as the veils continue to thin, do this, work with your ancestors on the Day of the Dead. And always.
I can always ask you, Judy, for questions, and you could coach them through too. So
yeah, you can contact me too. Yes, thank you. Thanks again, Linda. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and have a good rest of your